This is Defiance Daily, dispatches for the Defiant. I am your host, Miles Taylor, and you are here on this Wednesday for our weekly mission briefing. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't open by saying that yesterday was without a doubt the most dramatic day of the Trump presidency. The president of the United States threatened to destroy a civilization, to commit genocide, and then he capitulated and tentatively accepted an Iranian peace plan that would give our adversaries, by the way, almost everything that they want. Now, some call this taco. Trump always chickens out. In this case, we should be relieved that the American president did not annihilate innocent civilians, did not wipe them off the map. And we should be terrified that I am even saying those words to you right now, that this was even possible. Thankfully, as CNBC reported, the market barely reacted to Donald Trump's historic threat yesterday. And there was a reason. They predicted that he would back down. That's become a pattern. But not members of Congress or even allies in his own party, because they were worried, terrified even, that the president had become unglued, that he was indeed prepared to commit genocide, that he might even use a nuclear weapon. And judging by the reported mad scramble inside the White House, it seems like his own team felt that way too. Trump, of course, will have noticed all of the outrage yesterday. And after yesterday, he is probably more terrified than ever of the political opposition retaking Congress. 70 House Democrats called for his removal via the 25th Amendment. Multiple top MAGA allies defected and did the same. And the chorus of voices saying the word impeachment was louder than ever. Which leads me to our mission of the week here at Defiance.org. In the wake of all of this, it is nearly certain that Donald Trump will view the midterms as central to his political survival. And if he was not already, he will be planning to do everything possible to sabotage the election. It's not an overstatement. And that's why this week we are focused on fighting election sabotage. We have special guests with us today, including an exclusive interview with Congressman Dan Goldman, as well as an organization we will be highlighting and teaming up with to stop Donald Trump's efforts to rig the midterms. It's perhaps the most important mission we could take on this year, not just as an organization, but as Americans. Before we begin tonight, I want to say, please join Defiance.org. Head over to our website. You can sign up for free for our updates. But if you feel inspired to do more than just doom scroll in this moment, then join us as a member. 100% of your member fees go to action to protect our democracy. That's why this organization exists in the first place, is to take action. Yeah, we talk about what's happening, but every Wednesday, we announce the thing that we are doing to fight back against Donald Trump's abuses of power. You can also join us on Substack, subscribe on YouTube. Of course, as always, please like and share these messages to make sure they get out to more people in this crucial moment. Now, we start tonight with a remarkable panel to talk about the election threats, but also the positive trend lines we are seeing right now into the midterms. I want to welcome on to Defiance Daily, once again, the incredible Kim Rogers from the State and Local Election Alliance. Kim leads that organization and has spent over 25 years protecting U.S. elections, including raising $30 million in 2022 to defeat election deniers in battleground states. Kim, it's great to have you back, my friend.
So good to see you. Thanks for having me, Miles.
Yeah, we are also welcoming Max Flugrath onto the program once again from Fair Fight Action, where Max is the Senior Communications Director, leading the charge in Georgia and beyond on voting rights action. Max, it's great to have you on the program, my friend.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
You guys, I want to ask you just up front, open-ended question, and I'll start with you, Kim. After what we saw yesterday, you can't possibly be more assured about the midterm elections. I would imagine you, like me, feel like, okay, it's game time. This guy has lost his marbles, and if he's going to put everything onto the field, so are we.
You're 100% right. Like, we have to do everything possible to win this November, because everything we do in this November paves the entire way for the rest of this term. And this is how we can stop that man. And honestly, with some of the results from yesterday, we are in a really good place, but there is a long time between now and November. So we cannot take anything for granted, especially with how chaotic is, I guess, the kind way to say it, things are in Washington right now.
That's right. Well, and I'm glad, Kim, you mentioned last night, because it was great for the political opposition in this country. Even some of the losses were wins. And I have a short clip here from creator Amanda Nelson explaining those wins last night.
Last night, and Democrats had a great night. We'll start with the loss. This is Georgia, the 14th congressional district. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene's seat. Sean Harris was the Democrat. He lost by almost 12 points. The problem for the Republicans is that is a 25-point swing to the left. That is the biggest swing to the left in any House special election since Trump was inaugurated. In Georgia, in Marjorie Taylor Greene's district. People who tell you that margin changes don't matter if the candidate loses do not know what they're talking about. Margins are how parties determine where resources, money, time, volunteers are going to be spent. Republicans are not going to have to dump a ton of money into Georgia, including their upcoming Senate election. It's not going to work. The big one in Wisconsin, their state Supreme Court, the Democrat won by a lot, 20 points. This court is now 5-2 majority Democrat until at least 2030. Taylor won counties that Trump won in 2024 by double digits. Speaking of Wisconsin, the Brown County Board of Supervisors elected the first trans woman in a Trump +7 district. The single Republican on the Dane County Board of Supervisors lost his re-election bid after saying that homelessness was caused by sin. If you count Republicans not caring about homelessness to be the sin, then yeah, I kind of agree with that. Waukesha, conservative county, has a Democrat as mayor now. She was running against one of the most conservative members of the Wisconsin State House and an election denier. A Republican has sat in this seat for 20 years. No longer. Flipped another mayoral seat in River Falls, Wisconsin. Bump, bump, bump. Another one bites the dust. All three Moms for Liberty-backed school board candidates in this district in Waukesha County lost. Get out. Bye. Voters in Festus, Missouri ousted every single council member who voted to install a new data center. Get out. Bye. And a Democrat has flipped a school board seat in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She ran against a Republican who said that immigrant children were dangerous. Children. Immigrant children. Children. Small human beings. Small ones. Hear me out. Wisconsin is the new Minnesota. Georgia is the new Virginia. And we should have the DNC convention in Atlanta. See you later.
A fascinating breakdown. And Kim, I'm going to go to you in a moment, because Defiance.org teamed up with you on some of the things you just accomplished in Wisconsin. So I want to get to that. But Max, I want to throw you a question first. Amanda positions that loss by Democrat Sean Harris as not too bad of an outcome. Do you think that analysis is correct, and that the mere swing in numbers signals something much more significant happening in Georgia?
I do. And, another example of this is looking at Florida, a couple special elections that happened there recently where in Trump's own backyard in the state house district that encompassed Mar-a-Lago, a Democrat won. And if you look into the numbers there, the only way that Democrat could have won is if they had fairly significant support from independent, non-party affiliated voters and from some Republicans. So, you hear sort of anecdotal evidence, you see it on social media, in the news, how, MAGA as a coalition is sort of fracturing. And now we're seeing that actually happen in some election results. And, it illustrates why we're here and talking about all of this, because the Republicans know this. They're looking at the same polling, they're looking at the same data, and they are desperately afraid of the midterms. And that's why they are desperate to sort of sabotage any way they can the elections.
Kim, tell us what happened in Wisconsin. Tell us what your organization did. We were so thrilled a few weeks ago to team up with you. Defiance.org members have been asking us what that partnership netted, and it netted some really great news. Talk to us about Wisconsin.
I mean, it netted 18 wins out of our 22 targeted races. So we are ecstatic. Amanda was talking about margins. Chris Taylor won in a landslide, and we saw a lot of big swings. She also mentioned the Waukesha mayor. Elisa Havenslavin won by only 2.5%. But in that swing, it was almost a 30-point swing in Waukesha from previous. This is a woman who Scott Walker actively tweeted against, and she was running against a man who had been an extreme Republican in the Wisconsin State Assembly, even trying to oust the Wisconsin State Elections Director. So, I mean, we didn't just beat, this wasn't just like a red versus blue. These are mostly nonpartisan races. This was democracy versus fascism, and democracy prevailed. Not just in Waukesha, pro-democracy majority picked up a seat in Green Bay, and so goes Green Bay, is how Wisconsin goes, just a crucial part of the state. And in deep red Marathon County, we flipped a judge seat by 44 points. There is something happening here. And, you know, Amanda said it, like, this is the new Minnesota. If we invest in these races, they can be won, even in these low turnout, low investment races.
Max, tell us a little bit about the threat environment. I mean, you have been tracking this extremely closely, what the Trump administration is doing to try to literally rig the midterm elections. Later on in the program, we're going to be talking to the leader of one of the main organizations fighting back against some of that in the courts. But what does that threat landscape look like to you right now? Again, especially in the wake of the craziness we saw this week of the president going rogue on Iran.
Well, you know, you've seen the SAVE Act installed in the Senate. You know, the Supreme Court also hasn't ruled on two key cases that Republicans see to their success: the mail voting case, Watson v. RNC, and the voting maps gerrymandering case, Louisiana v. Calais. You've also seen Trump's sort of broader demand that Republicans rig the voting maps largely unsuccessful. And so they are getting increasingly desperate because they are watching what is happening in these elections. You know, Trump is historically unpopular and Republicans are losing in all of the generic ballot polls. And so, you know, you think about the saying, desperate times call for desperate measures. You know, there's a lot of sort of wild things that I think could happen, and we can't sort of put anything out of the realm of possibility. And I would narrow it down to a couple of things. You know, more attempts to seize 2020 election ballots, use them as a pretext to change how elections are conducted, maybe attempts to purge voters at massive scales across the country. You know, that seems like a possibility given how hard DOJ has been going to try and seize this voter data. Maybe they'll try and mess with USPS and mail ballot delivery, like the president's executive order calls to do illegally. And, you know, there may be some sort of, you know, this would be in much closer proximity to the actual election, but there may be some efforts to mess with and or seize 2026 ballots or voting machines. So, you know, there's a whole landscape of potential threats out there. And I think it's really incumbent upon both red and blue states to be thinking through this now, getting plans in place and being prepared.
And Kim, you guys are focused primarily in, you know, heading to the midterms on state and local races and those critical races closest to the American people and in democracy. And one of the things that we were excited to team with you on is some of what you all were doing to make sure that this was a safe and secure election and to get out the vote. What lessons did you learn in Wisconsin this week that you think are good news for November and for a secure election? Oh, we might have you on mute.
We do. Sorry. One of the biggest things
we can do a Pictionary version of it too.
I've been doing this.
When Congressman Goldman comes on next, he and I are going to do the whole segment in Pictionary fashion.
I mean, honestly, I would pay to see that. I think that's a great fundraiser. A little democracy charade. Well, I mean, I think one of the most important things in all of this is electing people who will stand up to Trump. The places where we've had the most success is where people refuse to comply with these insane demands to take personal voter data out of the states. And I think we've seen that in places like Minnesota, Maine, Arizona, across the board, folks are standing up to him. And that is probably the thing that has me the most optimistic about the fall is we have strong people in these places, and everyone is talking to each other. They are preparing for these worst case scenarios. They are doing tabletop exercises. They are communicating secretaries to secretaries, clerks to clerks. There are amazing organizations like the large election jurisdictions folks, like getting out there and talking to each other. So they're prepared. But I think one of the biggest things that we can do collectively, and your Defiance members can do, is remind people that everything Trump is trying to do is not constitutional. Like, by its core, the folks who founded this country were kind of trying to get away from this tyrant type rule. So our decentralized election system is set up that way. And so one of the things we've started saying is we want to get the F out of elections, with the F being feds. And we are going to keep reminding people that the states oversee elections and our local folks run them. And I think that's a great way to remind people every day that everything Trump says is actually unconstitutional, illegal. So
we're going to put another F in elections. That's Max Flugrath. Max, very quickly, final word. Are you feeling more or less confident after this week about Americans rising to the challenge?
More, given the wins, but also, hitting on what Kim said, people are sort of picking up on what's happening. But I do want to leave people with sort of a final thought of caution, something that I think is sort of floating under the radar that people do need to start thinking through now is if, there's a lot of states, blue states mainly, blue states only, passing laws to sort of try and mitigate some of these things in the front end. They're expressly outlawing law enforcement, federal troops from polling places, even though that's already illegal. They're doing things adjacent to that. I would just say, it's great to point out these things are illegal. It's great to pass these protections, but we need to think through logistically, how will local and state officials respond if Trump ignores all that and sends troops to the actual polls, sends the FBI to the actual polls? These are, not comfortable things to think about, but we have to be uncomfortable now so we can be prepared later.
Max, it's a good flag. After we speak to Congressman Goldman, I'm going to ask our next guest after that exactly that question, because I have a feeling he's prepared to go sue their pants off. Kim Rogers, Max Flugrath, thank you both so much for joining us on Defiance Daily.
Thanks, Miles. Great to see you.
Thanks, Miles.
Now, since the start of this year, we've seen voting records seized, threats of intimidation at the polls, and musings of the federal government seizing from the state to monitor elections. While we have no shortage of organizations fighting against election sabotage, we need America's representatives in our government to fight as well. Well, our next guest is doing exactly that. Take a look.
This is all Stephen Miller's grand plan, a coordinated effort. But this is what you can do. Last week, I introduced an amendment to the DHS appropriations bill that would prohibit the seizure of any voting records, any voter machines from any states in advance of the election. The Senate can add that amendment. The Republicans rejected it, but the Senate Democrats can add that amendment right now to this bill before it gets passed. And that way we can begin to protect our elections. So call your senator, tell them to add this amendment, because we're not going to let them steal our election.
The one member of Congress you don't need to call is that member of New York. Congressman Dan Goldman joins us now. Congressman, how are you, my friend? Great to have you on the program.
I'm good, Miles. Great to be with you.
I got to say, I want to get your reaction just really quickly up front to what we saw this week. I mean, it's hard to move on from an American president openly threatening a genocide, and not in jest. I mean, reinforced by all of his other comments. How are you thinking right now about the waywardness of the U.S. presidency and the willingness or maybe unwillingness of some of your colleagues to hold him accountable?
Yeah, look, I'm scared. I don't say that lightly, but I think it's a combination of his diminishing mental capacities, his increasing desperation as he realizes that everything is caving in around him, and his polling is terrible, his policies are terrible, the American people are suffering, and he's, I think, clearly implicated in the Epstein files that have not been turned over. in combination with the fact that he has no moral compass, he has no integrity, he does not care about the country, he only cares about himself, that cocktail is dangerous. And I don't think that it's out of the question for him to actually follow through on some of the unhinged and out of control threats that we saw yesterday. But even if he doesn't, what I'm worried about is the damage that it is causing. Because, I'll hear from my Republican colleagues all the time, it's just bluster, it's bluffing, it's threats, it's negotiating. Well, the Iranian people don't think so. They were gathering in protest on bridges in Iran as human shields to the destruction of their bridges. And when the purpose of this war ostensibly is to foment some kind of regime change or revolution, where by supporting the Iranian people, who of course do not like the horrific regime that will kill and does kill tens of thousands of them, why would he attack them? He is pushing them closer to the regime. He's hardening the regime's power. And then he goes so overboard, and this deal that he struck, quote unquote, whatever deal it is a disaster. We are so much worse off today than we were before the war began. And so, yes, I am scared of some cataclysmic thing that he will do, but I'm also just on a day-to-day level really concerned about where he is leading us through this desperation and derangement.
Well, one of the things that I've been saying, Congressman, is a nuke is going to go off during the Trump presidency. And I don't mean that in terms of, we're going to get in a nuclear exchange with another country. But Donald Trump is hell-bent on resuming nuclear testing, something that has not happened in the United States since the end of the Cold War. I remember him talking about it in the first administration. He was obsessed with that literal finger on the red nuclear button. He wants to see a bomb go off. That's a scary attitude for an American president to have, is, I really want to test nuclear bombs. I want to see what my authority looks like. And he seemed to flirt with that this week. And I've got to say, a man who is unashamed to commit war crimes is certainly going to be unashamed to commit election crimes. And that's something that you have been sounding the alarm about since the very beginning of this administration, saying that this guy tried to steal an election before and prevent the transfer of power. He's going to do it again. Again and again, you've been proven right. Were you shocked at all when you saw the mail-in ballot executive order? If so, what about that shocked you? And I'm also curious to hear about things that you've been doing in response.
No, I'm not. I mean, at this point, I'm not shocked about anything that he will do to try to steal the election. And I think that the desperation that I was talking about has played out in his effort to build towards stealing this upcoming election. It started right with the partisan gerrymandering. That did not go as planned. Then he started moving into the search warrants for the Fulton County and demanding voter rolls from all of the states, and then suing states that did not give him the voter rolls. And just to be clear, there is no reason for the federal government to have voter rolls. The states administer the elections. The federal government does not. The only reason you would want the voter rolls is to purge them, which is exactly what he wants to do. And then we saw, even with the ICE operation in Minneapolis, I was blown away by this. Pam Bondi, the attorney general, who does not oversee ICE, wrote a letter to Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, saying, we will withdraw ICE if you give us your voter rolls. Then they're openly talking about putting ICE agents at polls as a form of intimidation. And we know these ICE agents are not just stopping immigrants who they are targeting because they know them to be here illegally or otherwise. They're just stopping anyone who may look like an immigrant, and they're using excessive force. They're killing Americans. This is not just, this is immigration enforcement. No, this is intimidation. And so the mail-in balloting, which he has always railed against, even though, of course, that's how he votes, I guess, mail-in balloting for me, but not for thee, it has always been, his pet peeve because he doesn't like the fact that Democrats vote by mail. And that's literally what it comes down to. There's nothing about mail-in balloting that is suspicious in any way, shape, or form. You have to have a signature that matches. And the fact that he did this is not a surprise at all. I do not think it will hold up in court. And I know our friend Mark Elias is challenging it as our 23 state attorneys general. But it is not going to be the last thing that he tries. And what we need to do is recognize that he will go to whatever ends to try to rig or steal this election. We need to anticipate where he's going next. And we need to, in part, call it out because if we tell the American people where he's going before he goes there, it undermines his entire argument. But we also need to be prepared to push back, whether it be legally or legislatively or through state secretaries of state, et cetera.
You and I have both spent a lot of time on making sure that DHS is a shield to protect our elections. I was one of the original authors of the legislation to create an election protection mission for the Department of Homeland Security, and yet Donald Trump has turned that shield into a sword. He's very obviously trying to use the election protection powers, as limited as they are at the Department of Homeland Security, as sort of a cudgel against the states, as a way to monitor the states, as a way to insert DHS into a place it doesn't belong, is sort of monitoring Americans' ballots. This idea of the post office sticking tracking codes on mail-in ballots it's insane. It's authoritarian that the federal government would have the ability to track someone's ballot and know where that ballot is in the mail system and who it belongs to. So I want to ask you, in light of all of this, what do you think, especially some of the efforts that you've proposed, is most important to safeguard election integrity and to prevent those tools in the future from being used for nefarious purposes?
Yeah, there are a lot of things, but what you were just saying made me think back to Kristi Noem's comment when she slipped up, I think, and said that the Department of Homeland Security has jurisdiction over elections, and we're going to make sure that the right people vote. That laid it bare as to what they're trying to do, which is not to have citizens vote or everyone vote or access to people, better access. It is literally to pick and choose who votes, which party, etc. So there are a number of things that we can do. The first is that I've been doing is continue to push this issue of the seizure of voting machines, ballots, the machinery of our elections, because there's no reason for the federal government to do that. You obviously have a lot of familiarity with that from the 2020 election. That is, I think, a huge danger because, of course, if they do that, they will be able to pretend as if there was something wrong, even if there wasn't. They can manually change things and make it seem like there was something wrong. I was encouraged, of course, as we all were, by the courts in 2020. And so I do think that our courts are going to be a bulwark against the litigation. But what I am concerned about more than, litigation of fraud or et cetera, is the outright interference and rigging, and whether that is using CISA as part of the Department of Homeland Security that is now being run by election deniers to help foreign interference in our elections, to help interfere, to help make, it's supposed to be the security of elections, but it's actually, as you say, turn the shield into a sword and actually influence the elections or change the elections. Or, in some other way, insert the federal government into the state's counting of these ballots. If the ballots are actually ultimately counted fairly, without interference, I do have some faith that the courts will uphold that. The real issue is going to be how can they manipulate the actual results, and that's what we have to be prepared for.
Final question, because I know we have to let you go, Congressman. Given some of the results this week, we saw some huge Democratic gains in races that Democrats would have lost by double digits in previous years. Are you more confident than you were, say, a month ago that the political opposition in this country is prepared to make this election too big to rig?
I hope so. I think that's the right question. Certainly a month ago, I felt very confident that Democrats would at least we will take back the House and with a decent chance as the Senate. But I think your question is the right one, which is the margin matters, both in terms of number of seats, but also in terms of the actual outcome. It happened to be right that in Georgia was, I forgot the exact number, you remember, 11,000 votes. What we know is that voter fraud is simply not a thing. The Heritage Foundation itself, which has been pushing the Save America Act, has found that only 10 cases have been proven where a non-citizen actually voted. There's been other forms of voter fraud, but a non-citizen has only been proven to have voted in an election 10 times out of 2 billion ballots from 1992 to 2024. It just doesn't happen. But if it's close, if it is very close, if these elections are close, the argument carries more curb appeal, even if it doesn't carry any legal validity. So the margin does matter. And yes, I'm encouraged by what we saw in Florida a couple of weeks ago, what we saw in Wisconsin. Everything seems to be reflecting the general mood, which is that this is a disastrous administration that is in the pocket of billionaires and is focused more on using the office of the presidency to make money for the president, his families, and his associates. And 99% of the American people are suffering because of it. And that's not even to mention all the shenanigans with the Department of Justice and using it as a political weapon and going after our immigrant communities with such excessive force and cruelty. Everything about this administration has been, unfortunately, as I and many others predicted, has been a disaster. And that he's gonna have a comeuppance in November. But it is important that everyone does get out and vote. Every vote matters. I don't care if you're in a safe district, if you're not in a safe, you're in a safe state or whatever you may think. I promise you, as an elected official, I'm telling you, every vote matters because the margin of victory matters. And the message that the comparison between the 2026 election and prior elections matters in terms of how politicians feel, what their reaction is going to be to an election. So I don't want to hear anybody say, oh, my vote doesn't matter, I'm in a safe seat. No, every vote matters. Everyone has to get out and vote.
The margin matters. Those are words to remember going into this election. I will say, Congressman, if I was in the Trump administration, in this second administration, I would be very much fearing a Dan Goldman who goes from the minority into the majority. I would not want to be on the receiving end of a subpoena written by you, good sir, but I have a sneaking suspicion we're going to see a flurry of them if the American people go out and do what they need to do this November. So thank you for everything that you're doing to fight over there to protect these elections. And we hope to keep the conversation going.
Thank you, Miles. I look forward to getting my old friend, the subpoena, back.
So do we. So do we. Thank you, good sir. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
As we said, folks, our mission this week at defiance.org is fighting the election sabotage. Congressman Goldman is doing that on Capitol Hill, in the House. Kim Rogers, who we spoke to earlier, our organization has teamed up with to do that at the state and local level. Max Flugrath and team are calling out the abuses of power that are undermining our elections. But our next guest is doing the lawsuits. Our next guest is at the forefront of protecting our democracy, not for Democrats, not for Republicans, for all Americans who are worried that the democratic process itself is being hijacked for nefarious ends. I'm thrilled today to welcome Trevor Potter, who runs the Campaign Legal Center. He's the president over there of CLC, a nonpartisan organization dedicated to solving the wide range of challenges facing American democracy, including threats to our elections. Prior to founding CLC, Trevor, of course, served as chairman of the Federal Election Commission. He is with us today on Defiance Daily. Great to have you here, my friend. How are you, Trevor?
Thank you, Miles. Really great to be with you.
Well, we're excited to have this conversation with you. I just want to ask you right out of the gate about this executive order from last week. I mean, we were on the air as the executive order dropped. The president doing what a lot of people like you have suspected and warned that he might do, which is attempt to use the executive levers of power to effectively ban mail-in voting, or to tell certain people he's going to use federal power to keep them from using mail-in voting, even though the same week Donald Trump sent a mail-in ballot in Florida to vote in Florida elections. And he did that. He dropped that executive order. It was more draconian than even I expected. The use of DHS and the Postal Service to effectively spy on Americans' ballots alarmed me. But those things don't just alarm you. You guys do something about it. And you joined our friends over at DDF, Democracy Defenders Fund, to go sue the Trump administration over this executive order, stating that it was fundamentally unconstitutional. I want to ask you, Trevor, right out of the gate, about that EO and your lawsuit and where you think this is headed.
We filed suit within 48 hours of that executive order being signed, partly because it flows directly from the executive order that Trump put out a year ago, that again purported to tell states how they could run elections, purported to tell the Independent Election Assistance Commission what it had to do, claimed that the voting machines had to be changed before the next election, which would be impossible. And when he issued that a year ago, we also filed suit, and we got a preliminary injunction from Judge Kolar-Catelli in D.C., who's a very respected senior judge, with a 50-page opinion that boiled down to saying the president doesn't have a role in designing election administration. The Constitution gives that to the states with a backup for Congress to make regulations, if it wants, on time, place, and manner of federal elections. So she said, there's no role for the president here. That was a year ago. We fought that through much of the year, finally got the permanent injunction. And so when this came out, we looked at it and said, it's the same game again. It's the president claiming powers he doesn't have to attempt to shape how elections are run, something that's left up to the states. As you point out, one of his big bugbears has been absentee voting, mail-in voting, and he's attacked that even though he himself has historically routinely voted by mail.
So strange to see him act hypocritically. I just have never known him to be that way.
And his excuse, which should insult almost every voting American, was, hey, I'm the president, I'm busy. As if other Americans don't have jobs and kids and things they have to do in life. I mean, one of the things here that he faces, there are a couple things here in terms of the politics of this. One is that mail-in voting is very popular, making it possible for people to vote without having to go to the polls on election day when they may be working or working some distance from home. Has become very popular. It's popular among Republicans. As you may know, Miles, I started my legal career in Washington as a Republican election lawyer, working for the RNC and other party committees. And they regarded mail-in voting as one of their secret weapons. They spent a lot of money developing lists of voters, usually older voters in places like Arizona and Florida, who they could count on to vote by mail in advance. And the reason for that was twofold. One, they could what they called bank the votes, meaning they were done before the election. They didn't have to keep reaching out and contacting people and urging them to vote. And then if the weather was bad on election day or someone didn't feel well, they didn't have to worry about them not voting because it was already done. And so when Trump in 2019-20 started to attack vote by mail, the Republican Party politicos were completely thrown. He was urging their voters not to vote by mail. So, I mean, what we've seen is, in fact, a change in who votes by mail, but that's because Trump scared some Republicans off and they thought there was a problem voting by mail. Whereas the Democratic Party, particularly in COVID, pushed voting by mail to make sure that people actually could vote and wouldn't be afraid of going to polling places. But with that suit last year and our wins in court on that, when he signed this order this year, I think we see it. It's important to fight it in court. I'm confident that we will end up with the court again saying, as we said last time, the president doesn't run elections. But I think you need to see it in the broader context of his PR battle, of him attempting to poison the well and convince Republicans that there's something wrong with our voting system. That's why he pushes the SAVE Act, which he knows the Senate is not going to pass. Because then he could say, I warned them there was fraud. They didn't do anything about it. I issued executive orders. They found a way to stop those. And therefore, we have fraud in our elections. So that, I think, is the game that he's up to, is trying to create doubt and provide a basis, if the midterms don't go the way he wants, to challenge those results and say they use procedures that I ordered them not to, or that I think are fraudulent. There are a couple of those procedures. One is the issue of simply being able to vote by mail. The next is having votes received after the election, but legally, lawfully cast before the election, on the basis of state laws in those states that allow ballots to be counted if they're put in the mail before election day, but received afterwards with a postmark that indicates they're legitimate. And Trump has objected to that, which a number of states do. And I think we'll use that as a grounds for claiming that there's something wrong. One of the big states using that system is California. And of course, with the new lines in California, Democrats are expected to gain some seats there. And I would expect Trump would object. The other thing that's going on here is that he is attempting, with no congressional authorization, no funding, no permission, he's trying to create a federal voter list, something we've never had. We're actually proud we don't have it, because elections are run by the states, and we think that's much more secure to have 50 state lists and verified locally, as opposed to one big national list, which could get hacked. So he's trying to create a national.
Yeah, I mean, just one thing that I would say on that is, look, if OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, which held the security clearances of all U.S. government officials, my security clearance included, if they can get hacked and the Chinese can steal my security clearance, I've got zero confidence as an American that a federal voter database is somehow going to be safe. And also, Trevor, it just strikes me as one of the most big brother things the federal government could ever do is to create this massive list of all of us around the country that are registered to vote. And heck, I mentioned earlier, sticking the barcodes on these mail-in ballots that can be federally tracked seems incredibly spooky. I mean, in the wrong hands, how do I know that the Trump administration is not attaching tracking to Miles Taylor's ballot to find out where it goes and saying, uh-oh, we lost it in the mail. I mean, that's not even conspiracy theory anymore. We've seen such real manipulation of normally nonpartisan levers of government, from the Federal Housing Administration to the railroads to other, sleepy corners of the government that shouldn't be politicized, that are being politicized. I mean, I think Democrat, Republican, or independent, Americans should see that barcodes on ballots and federal government databases as a big, big red flag, right?
Well, and part of this is, of course, when you talk about politicizing the government, one of the things Trump is trying to do is to get the independent postal service to follow his orders and do things they're not permitted to do by law. He doesn't run the postal service. It's created by Congress. The Constitution says that Congress's responsibilities include the mail. And yet he's purporting in this executive order to tell the Postal Service that they have to use his list. And the other issue about his list is that it's flawed. It is inaccurate. We know it's inaccurate because they're using inaccurate databases. What we've seen when states themselves have tried to go in and remove people from the rolls because they think they're not citizens is that they're using lists that are outdated. They have a list perhaps of green card holders that they got from the federal government, but that has never been matched with the list of people who have become naturalized citizens. So we see people being told they can't vote because they're not citizens, and they're holding their naturalization papers, which, those systems don't speak to each other. It may be that someday we're going to be in a situation where the government could have an accurate list of citizens, but it doesn't have that now. Now, whether you'd want the federal government to have that list, what you would allow them to do with it is a different question. But that's Congress's question as a policy matter. It's not the president's, and yet he is creating what will be a flawed, inaccurate list with holes in it. That's one of the things we at CLC are fighting right now. We're working in a number of states across the country to prevent the administration from getting their hands on the confidential details in voter lists. Usually the name and address of voters are public, but what the administration wants is information that includes people's birth dates and their social security numbers. And that, as you've just said, is not going to be safe if it's in a big federal list. It violates the Privacy Act passed by Congress to protect our data. And we are helping states around the country in court fight those requests. And it's not just blue states. There are lots of red states that are traditional Republican libertarian states who said roughly what you just said. Wait a minute. We don't want the federal government having all of our citizens' personal information, and what are they going to do with it? So there are battles all over the place on this.
I've got to say, Trevor, for folks who don't know CLC, you guys have got basically the Avengers of election protection in your midst. Most lawyers don't wear capes, but if they did, you've got the ones that wear capes that go fight these things in the courts. And it strikes me that this year, yes, organizing is going to matter for people to get out the vote and have a strong election outcome. It's going to matter that people go to polling places, that there are poll watchers to make sure the system runs the way it's supposed to. But, we're not woolly-eyed here. I mean, I think it's obvious things are going to happen that are going to require lawyers on an emergency basis to run to the courts and sue against violations of the rules, violations of Americans' fundamental rights. Tell me how you guys are preparing for that at CLC to meet the moment and to be ready the moment it's needed in California or Florida or Arkansas or Georgia to get there, to get to the courthouse, and to be ready to make sure that our elections are run free and fair in this country.
Well, you're right that having expert lawyers being ready to file lawsuits, being ready to defend our democracy and the rule of law is essential to free and fair elections. It's not the only thing by any means, but you have to have teams of lawyers that can go out there and ensure the rules are followed, and the federal government doesn't put its hand on one side of the scale and pick their chosen winners. And that's what we're doing here at CLC. We're nonpartisan. We're 110 staff at the moment and growing. And more than half of those are lawyers. Many of them are in court all the time. We're in, I think, 72 different lawsuits right now. We've been able to hire really qualified expert lawyers, unfortunately, from the Department of Justice and other federal agencies, where they've either been fired or they have left because they saw what was happening and distrusted the politicization of that department and those agencies. So we've got a very skilled team, and what we're doing is working with other groups in the field, dividing up responsibilities, but focused on ensuring that the rule of law is protected. And that does mean talking with state and local officials, election officials now, warning them of what could be coming, preparing to file suits, doing legal research, looking at this from one end to the other to see what needs to be done now. We're actually in court in Utah and Missouri fighting gerrymanders there, which we think violate the state constitutions. As you know, some states like California, the citizens had an opportunity to approve redrawing the maps and change their constitution, but that has not happened. It was the other way in Utah. The citizens put in a provision preventing gerrymandering. The legislature tried to do it anyway, and the state Supreme Court unanimously said that the legislature can't overrule what the citizens have done in requiring nonpartisan map drawing. So Utah, we've had a big win, and we've been fighting that now for several years through the legal process there, with a couple trips back and forth to the state Supreme Court, a team of lawyers almost living in Utah. But out of that will come a new fair map. And for the first time in years, Salt Lake City will have its own congressional district. In Missouri, there's a provision of the Constitution that says that you can do redistricting once a decade after the census. It doesn't say anything about the middle of the decade. So we're fighting there. Florida, we worked years ago on a citizen initiative that passed that amended the state constitution to prevent gerrymandering. And so if the Florida legislature, as they're promising to do, goes ahead and passes a new gerrymandered map, an even more gerrymandered map than they have now, we will be part of the team fighting that. So that's the run up to the election. And then on election day itself and afterwards, we're going to be prepared to go into court to defend the citizens' choices against what we're pretty sure will be a Trump administration attack, whether it is claiming fraud, trying to seize voting machines, objecting to election certifications. These are all possibilities, and I think the best way to fight them is to be prepared.
Well, I have to say, Trevor, that was the one silver lining of the Justice Department being gutted by this administration, is watching some of the best lawyers in the country that were protecting the United States officially coming into y'all's ranks at CLC to keep protecting the United States by bringing these suits back against the government they had just left. I mean, that story is going to be written by screenwriters in the years to come, but you all are living it right now. And I just want to say, my friend, before we let you go, a Defiance.org member, Betty, recorded a short video for us to give you an announcement. Why don't we cut to Betty?
Great.
Hi, this is Betty Ryan in New Hampshire. On behalf of members of Defiance.org, we are thrilled to offer direct support to Campaign Legal Center. We are providing immediate investment of $20,000 in CLC's efforts to counter election sabotage, including your work to fend off the administration's attack on mail-in voting. Thank you for all the incredible work you do.
Thank you, Betty in New Hampshire. That is wonderful news.
Trevor, we call ourselves pro-democracy, Oprah. I would like to say that we're giving you a car, but I think you guys don't need a car. I think you guys need to be able to fund these lawsuits to protect our democracy. And when our members met the other week, number one on their list was we got to go get out there and get the backs of the people who are bringing these suits. So we're really excited to support you all. And I want to ask you a closing question, my friend, which is if you had advice for your average American out there who wants to get active to protect our democracy and maybe doesn't have time to go get a law degree and join Campaign Legal Center and to go bring these suits, what are the things that you would urge them to do today? And what are the ways they can get involved in CLC's work?
And you mean not just following your example and providing us the financial means to
that too. If they feel inspired, they can, and they should go to your site if they can support you above and beyond.
But beyond that, for which we'd be very grateful, I think the importance of volunteering, if you can, on a local basis. States are still accepting volunteers to be election day observers and providing training. It is really important to have sensible people in the polling stations ready to defend the process. And so I would start with that. Beyond that, on a nonpartisan basis, go out and support the candidates that you like, support the parties that you like, volunteer to make phone calls or send postcards. All of that helps, and talk to your friends and neighbors about what your concerns are and what you're doing about them.
Trevor Potter at the Campaign Legal Center, we're so grateful for what you're doing, my friend. Back to your public service as an FEC commissioner, to your public service today, continuing to protect elections. You also don't know this, my friend. I'm texting with one of our other mutual friends in the election protection space, and I think I have yet another way for Defiance.org to team with you all and for our members to support the great work you're doing. So I'll send you a message tomorrow and let you know what we're cooking up. But we are incredibly grateful for what you all do. You are truly unsung heroes out there protecting our right to vote. So
we're grateful for your support and that of your members. It means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. We'll be seeing you very soon, I'm sure.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Trevor. We told you folks this week, our mission at Defiance.org is fighting election sabotage. There are few organizations in the United States of America doing that more directly than the Campaign Legal Center. Again, if you feel inspired to support their work beyond what Defiance.org just did, we urge you to go check out Campaign Legal Center. Check out the different things that they are doing to protect our democracy. And unfortunately, you're probably going to hear their name as we get closer to the election, and they bring more suits to protect your right to vote, to protect the free and fair administration of American elections. And they just did that on mail-in ballots. We are extremely proud to support them, especially in the wake of that lawsuit against an obviously unconstitutional executive order. When that news broke and we were on the air, I said one thing to you all, which was, you do not need to be a lawyer to look at this executive order and know that it violates the United States Constitution. So obviously in violation of the law. And that also, by the way, goes beyond what we would expect to happen in our system of government. We expect the executive branch to do things that they anticipate are legal, and if they are challenged and they lose in the courts, to comply. We don't expect a president of either party to propose executive orders, to sign executive orders that are obviously illegal. In this case, that was done. And we need organizations out there fighting on the front lines. This is not the end of Defiance.org teaming with CLC. This is our number one mission this year to protect democracy, is to be able to get out there, make sure that we've got free and fair elections in the midterms. And as we've said many times, make sure those elections are too big to rig. We'll be doing more on that front. But this week, there are more actions that you can take. If you're a Defiance.org member, look, you already did your work. You contributed to the Club for Courageous Americans. You're helping to support CLC and what they're doing. But if you want to go further, we've got 3 things for you to do this week. 1 is to protect yourself. 2 is to protect others and their right to vote. And 3 is to protect the polls. All right, what's that first one? Something you can do right now. Make sure that you have not been purged from the voter rolls. Make sure that your voter registration is up to date. We have a very simple place for you to go do that. Don'tGetPurged.org. It's that simple. Don'tGetPurged.org. You can go to that site. It's powered by vote.org. You can enter your information, and you're going to either get a green checkbox or a red X. If you get a green checkbox, great. You're fantastic. Don't worry. Your voter registration, sorry, it's a .com, not a .org. Don'tGetPurged.com. Don'tGetPurged.com. That's the website you're going to go to. I put in my information. I put in my address. I got a green check mark back. That was very good news. I was even worried amidst all of this craziness that I might be getting purged from the voter rolls. We don't know what's happening in this environment. That's step number one. Protect yourself. Go check it out at don'tgetpurged.com and make sure that you are currently registered to vote. If you get that red X, you need to go make sure that you are registered and go take those actions. Second, you can protect others and their right to vote. I would urge everyone who's listening right now, everyone, join a Get Out the Vote movement or help family and friends confirm their voting status. Just send them a text with that Don't Get Purged link. Just do that today. That's a big public service you can do. It doesn't require a lot of work. You're sitting here listening to my hot air coming out of my mouth. You could just copy that web address, text it to a few people you care about and say, hey, I want to make sure. How about this? I'm going to give you another idea. Do you have a family group chain? Put that on your family group chain. Guys, these are really easy things. You cannot tell me in November if Trump tries to hijack the election, I can't believe this happened. And then say, oh yeah, I never sent those text messages that Miles Taylor suggested I should send. Easy thing to do. Make sure friends and family aren't getting purged in the voter rolls. But also, go volunteer to help get out the vote. I'm going to do this year. Many of you are going to do this. One organization I'd urge you to check out is powerthepolls.org. That one is a .org. Powerthepolls, POLLS.org. Go check out that website. This is another get out the vote effort that you can get involved in. We're going to be talking to more of those organizations this year. We're going to be teaming with more of those organizations this year. And if you are a Defiance.org member, you are going to be directly funding some of those organizations this year so that we have the biggest turnout midterm election that we have ever seen. That is very, very important. You care about this democracy? You don't want it to slide into an autocracy? Go fight to protect that right to vote. It's serious. I was not one of those guys every election cycle that tells you to go do these things. I wasn't. I am now. I used to oversee election security for the federal government. I'm scared shitless that this won't be a secure election if people don't go protect it. I mean that. I need you to do this. So those first two, don'tgetpurged.com. Make sure to send that to folks. Protect others. Powerthepolls.org. Sign up. Easy. Give a little bit of your time to protect your democracy. Then finally, if you can, protect the polls themselves. Sign up to be a poll worker. You can do this. It's very easy. I did it. I just got my stuff in the mail. In fact, in some states, you get paid to go be a poll worker. That's 1 or 2 times, minimum wage. Great. You can go check out eac.gov/Help America Vote. That's the Election Assistance Commission. eac.gov, semi-independent organization. Don't worry, Donald Trump's not going to personally get your information. eac.gov/Help America Vote. We will send this out to everyone who's a Defiance.org member afterwards, but really sign up to be a poll worker or poll watcher. Why? Weird things, unfortunately, are going to happen in the polls in November. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to pretend, this might be a totally clean election. There might not be any weirdness. Believe me, this is the man who tried to steal a federal election. He's going to be sending his allies to the polls. He's going to be trying to scare people. You being there, I assume that you have confidence in your own integrity, not to let people do weird things at the polls. Well, then sign up. Be trained on the rules of voter administration, voting administration, and go help protect the polls by being a volunteer or a poll worker that day. Again, we'll send you that link, eac.gov/Help America Vote. Those are 3 important things that you can do. But look, if you want a 4th, I have a 4th for you today. If you're a Defiance.org member, I want you to share your badge, because this week you earned this badge, probably one of the most important badges of any of our weekly missions. That's your badge for the week. I fought election sabotage. Post it on social media. Let other people know how important this mission is right now. I'm going to do the same thing as soon as we jump off the air. Is I'm going to go to our social media accounts. I'm going to repost that. Go check that out on Substack. Go check it out on X. Go check it out on Blue Sky. Go check it out on Instagram. The other places we've got defiance.org accounts. If you're really lazy, just wait until we've posted it and you can repost it. But you also could screenshot it right now. You could just take a picture. Go do that. It's important for you to tell the people in your social networks that you are prioritizing this. You're prioritizing fighting election sabotage. I wouldn't be sitting here, folks, if I wasn't worried about the future of our democracy. These are the types of things we have to do. We've got to get involved. We've got to get active. That is our weekly mission brief here at defiance.org. I do want to say again, a very special thank you to those of you who are members of the organization. You have no idea the impact your support is having. As Kim Rogers can attest, who was on the program earlier today, members of defiance.org made it possible for their organization, the State and Local Election Alliance, to go into Wisconsin this week to help make sure there was a huge voter turnout, to help make sure that the pro-democracy side was prepared to win in crucial elections. Those are the types of things we are doing together as an organization. We're making it possible. And defiance.org members just helped fund some of the most important lawsuits in America to protect your right to vote. So if you're not a member, thank the people right now who are members. Thank them for what they are doing every single week to fight back against Donald Trump's abuses of power. And if you want to check out the organization, go to defiance.org/join. You can see what it means to become a member, or you can just sign up to get our updates for free, to know what's happening, to know what the threats are to our democracy, and to consider getting into the fight with us. So thank you again, members of defiance.org, for another great weekly mission brief. You've undertaken a very important mission here. We are glad that you are telling us at the organization that this is what you want to prioritize, is protecting our fundamental rights to vote. So that is our episode today. Thank you, everyone who tuned in, and make sure tomorrow to join us for our regular Defiance Daily Show. We will have back with us my guest co-host for the week, Maritza Georgiou from the Grounded Substack with former Senator John Tester. She'll be guest hosting with me because my Defiance.org co-founder Xander Schultz is out on vacation this week. Tune in to watch us mock Xander, speak to another great guest, and have a conversation about what you can do to fight back and to protect your democracy. Thank you again, everyone. As we always say, stay loud, stay brave, and stay together. We'll see you tomorrow.